Woo! Nothing like a 75-point sell-off to get the adrenaline going, am I right? Welcome to today's trade video recap. It's July 27th, and we're going to be looking at the ES. This was a fascinating day, the kind of day that you get lots of volume and volatility, massive price swings, lots of action. It's a day trader's dream. For myself, I took a couple of entries here. Earlier in the day, I was still fairly long biased and in the buy the dip mode. So that was kind of my go-to strategy in the morning. And I want to talk about kind of a tipping point where you feel a change in the tide, a change in the flow, the dynamic shifts, and that moment when you can start to realize that can be very useful. So I had, an entry here based on kind of my typical trap seller setup. We had some accumulation and shorts entering in at the lows here at about just after 8 o'clock Pacific time. And then we did end up getting some nice movement to the upside. I took a starter position because the volatility and speed had not picked up super intensely yet. So this was a small starter, and I was willing to see if bulls were going to be able to push back up into a target area of this 46.23 area. And they were able to kind of go up to this region here where we saw this pullback down. So as we get into later in the day, this will become more applicable. But the whole idea of taking these concepts and just reversing them is something that now that there's a little bit more selling pressure and presence there, I will more heavily consider short side entries like this one here in hindsight, where you do have these nice moves down on volume, especially this situation here was actually quite nice, where we saw some very large selling pressure here and a failure below that, and then essentially kind of like this very brisk high volume activity, and then taking this as the origin of the move and setting a level at that point to watch for retracements. So it's just the flip of some of these concepts and trades that I was attempting to take today. So of course, in hindsight, I should have been on the other side of things. However, lots of good learnings here. So you can see that this return would have been an excellent entry with a fairly tight, several point stop. Maybe using this as kind of your line in the sand of, hey, I don't want it to go above that. Anyway, back to this long entry. So I had this long idea, wanted to see some further progression, and this was going to be kind of my level to scale out on that position. Never got there, so I covered and protected myself. At this point, I had to step away, unfortunately. So there was some consolidation right down at the same area of interest. There's potential I might have taken that same idea, and look, we did end up going right back up to that target area, and again offered up a very nice potential short here based on that setup as well. I want to talk about the VIX a little bit here too, at about 10:15, 10:20 or so, because you saw we were rather stagnant, which still kind of gave me the bias or at least gave me confidence in potential bounces here. But as soon as we started to ignite and put in some higher highs and make progress, that is when we see this shift in just shift in the feel of the day and who's in control. So here we are at 10 a.m. Pacific, and there was some news that ended up, I think, sparking this and fueling the momentum to the downside. So we do see some very high selling pressure come in, and this sold right back down to this same area of interest where I had looked to get long. And here was this kind of a critical deciding situation for me, was that we had pushed through this hard, tried to find some buyers back up here, and then immediately had this situation where we got a tape bomb and then a 2,000 lot passive order. You never know if they're going to spoof that or not. It was quite fascinating to kind of watch this order come in and then see everything just stall. And the moment that my first expectation was, okay, I want to see this, somebody pull this, and then we continue to blast back up through here, and then that would be my longs are on kind of hypothesis at that point. But we saw this sit here and absorb slightly, but it was almost like nothing was even going to attempt. Nobody was going to even attempt to bid this up into this area. And we started to cascade down with selling pressure. This isn't my normal setup here, but I actually took a short. Like that is how definitive that and kind of impactful this one moment was, of seeing this position come in and then we start to dip away from it. It just felt like we were about to get heavy. So I did end up entering a position, followed it down for a brief move as we kind of closed in on this 4,600 level. Since it was a rather spontaneous scalp, I took my, and I'm sorry, I think I had that, I labeled this as a red, indicating, suggesting a loss. However, this was actually a winner here. So it was a quick short scalp, just for about 4 or 5 points. And we had price retrace right back up again. If this was flipped, I'd be and had that the sort of mental presence in this moment to really flip my bias that quickly. This would have been a very nice place to scale in some size here, because we have the context of these heavy sellers coming in, this passive situation with not nearly as much size, but we still have a little bit sitting up there. So very nice opportunity. And another thing that I wanted to call out was over here on the candlestick chart, we had some, let's see, go to the hourly. Yeah, so right here at 46, it's about 46.11, maybe 46.11 to 46.08. There was a fairly nice shelf here where we had found a top, busted through it, and then we're retracing now to test that level again. There's also price movement from the pre-market, which pushed away from that area. So it created a more or less a demand zone in this 11 to 8 range. And as soon as this 11 to 8 range right here gave out and retested, that was just like the signal. That was the key moment for me. Ended up being a missed opportunity there, because we just started to hit the aggressive selling and absolutely no buyers interested in pushing this back up and back to the VIX here. We can just see the VIX was taking no prisoners There were no real significant pullbacks except for when we kind of hit up in this 1565 level for the rest of the day. So I kind of sat back because I wasn't ready to switch my context quite that quickly. And I sat back and I watched and I watched and I watched for capitulation volume, for sellers to hit it hard at the lows and to see buyers try to come back up. You can see I had an attempt here where I saw some unusually high volume, lots of passive buy orders getting filled here. We come back rather aggressively and consolidate. I saw this break up over, so I didn't get taking a position here, and this broke up over this area, which looked nice in the moment, but I was very fast to cover my position, because if this area gave out, it was likely to be more downside, and we got just that. So you can say again that hindsight is looking for that failure and then switching that bias and taking a short position if the hypothesis fails, like here, and then trying to just scale in short and follow a plan. Another nice rally here to the upside, once again back into this same area, but I had identified another potential long position as we continued to push lower. This 4564 level, pull this back up here, had some other potential. Yeah, so I was looking at this area right in here where we had, again in pre-market, made a nice move up. So potential demand zone where there's a possible bounce happening, and seeing this price moving up, come back in. Again, try to long here, and as soon as we didn't really see that progress to the upside, I exited that position. We faked out lower, came back up. I tried another small one and cut it. And so just a few other little attempts later in the day, but really the story was that we have been, the market has been staving off a sell-off like this for a while, and it was bound to happen, and here we are. So that certainly makes things more interesting going forward, and could potentially open the door in the coming days for some continued weakness and discount buys for a continuation of this short-term bullish cycle. So there you go. Key takeaway here is when you're attuned to the market and the flow and the feel of things and how the tape is moving, be aware of when the context feels like it shifts, because your intuition may be right. Happy trading, everyone, and I hope you had a great day.